pure gift. It's one of those moments that's like a pure gift to be here. We got a request to speak at a men's conference, and that was the first time. And we had never been invited to Arizona before. So we were like, well, at least we get to go to Arizona. So we decided to say yes. And then almost, I don't know, it didn't take any time at all. But I was like, oh, I wonder if there are any colleges around there I could, I don't know, see young people and, you know, women, I don't know, like, who might be discerning, I don't know. So I basically was thinking about putting my mind to it, and then Father Matt emailed me very quickly after I had accepted this request. So I feel so privileged to be with you and to be in your midst and to be in this beauty, this natural beauty. So I thought I'd start with a little story about two of my sisters. They were out for a lovely bike ride on a beautiful summer day, and I'm going to withhold their names just to protect the innocent and the embarrassed. So one sister rode ahead of the other one at an incredible speed, and hitting a bump, her bike threw her like a rodeo bronco, and she took air and fell directly into a perfectly manicured rose bush in front of a gorgeous Better Homes and Gardens kind of a house. And the sister who saw this happen, her first thought was obviously for the safety of sister. But her second thought, and it might have been concurrent, was that this might be like the last straw for the owner of the house to just leave the church. Like, it's just too much. Like, that's like the end. Like, you just destroyed my lawn. And sister races over, and sure enough, the owner of the house opens her door and comes out screaming. And they're like, oh, bracing themselves. She's like, you are an angel sent by God. An angel sent by God. And she pulls sister's road shoes entangled into the thorns, out of the bush. And there's still, to this day, an indent of that happening in the bush. And sister's all scratched up, and this woman is in tears, walking her into the house, and she was going through a messy divorce. She'd been away from her faith, and she had said her first sincere prayer in years. God, if you can hear me, I need a sign. Just moments before sister came. Here's your sign. This is no secret. Jesus knows exactly where you are. Jesus knows where you are. Jesus called you to be here. Called you to be here tonight. He called you to be here at Flagstaff, Arizona. He called you to be alive at this time in history, at this point. He knew from all eternity when he would call you into existence, when he would breathe life into you. When he would create you in his image and likeness. And that image and likeness, I remember hearing that growing up, you're made in the image and likeness of God. And I was like, that means nothing to me, But it's not like a made in China stamp. It's not like everyone's made in the same image and likeness. You are stamped. Something has been impressed, imprinted upon you that is totally unique to you. That was entrusted to you. Chosen for you. And you are communicating something of God himself that no one else communicates. That's unbelievable. That's amazing. That's how precious you are. How special you are. It's really beautiful. And so God knows where we are, and he can hear our quiet prayers, the ones we almost don't think to pray. So I thought we'd just entrust the night to the Blessed Mother, who trusted into the dark, and who's, brought us the light of the world. So give our hearts to her, especially Holy Spirit, amen. Blessed Mother, we turn to you, and we entrust our hearts and our lives to your eternal tenderness. Just like at Cana, you looked around and you saw a need that no one else even noticed. And you brought it to Jesus, and that was then over spilling with new wine, that emptiness. And we just open our hearts and we show you our places where we desire new wine. joy and peace and love. We ask these needs to Jesus. Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou amongst women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus. Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners, now and in the hour of our death. Amen. Holy Spirit, amen. I had the gift of being out in Kansas about this time last year, and we as Sisters of Life, we serve women who are pregnant and vulnerable. We host retreats, weekend retreats for men, women, young adults. We walk with college students. You might have met our sisters out in Denver at some point. We have a hope and healing mission for those suffering after abortion, and have the beautiful joy of seeing them come alive in His mercy. So we're not teachers, but sometimes we get to go into classrooms, like when we're visiting somewhere, they're like, can you talk to the kiddies? And we're like, love the kiddies. There's a child here, and a sister of Life Habit. She's 13 months old, but we feel pretty strongly. We'll chat later, Shannon. But we were out in Kansas, and they were like at a very, very tiny Catholic school in the middle of like farm country USA, and they were like, do you mind talking to the kindergartners? We're like, we just love that. We walk into the room, and literally the children, the purity and the goodness, it was like so many arrows to my heart. I almost burst into tears. Like there was a little child in the back in his wheelchair, and like a teacher's aide was like giving him like extra special attention, and like there's a little girl with Down syndrome like in the mix with everybody else on the carpet, and I like literally was like, keep it together, keep it together. I'm in front of the kiddies. And so they're like, gather children, let's gather, and sister has something to share with us. And I was like, and I started talking about how much God loves them, and how beautiful they were, and how special they were, and how He has a special plan for their life. And as I was saying this, one of the little boys like launches his hand in the air, and he goes, I know what it is. And I was like, what is your name? And he's like, Simeon. And I was like, oh, a prophet. I'm like, Simeon, what is God's plan? And he's like, we have to get more and more love inside our hearts and give it to other people so we can fight the devil. Now, Lord, let your servant go in peace. That's exactly the plan, my boy. We have to give more and more love inside our hearts. We have to give it to other people. Fight the devil. Incredible. And that's what I want to talk to you about tonight. Sanctity, holiness, Jesus, the life of Jesus. What happened to you at your baptism? At the moment of baptism, it's very simple baptism, right? Baptize you in the name of the Father, Son, Holy Spirit, water. At the moment of your baptism, everything changes for you. Forever. You are sealed. You are claimed. You are washed clean. You are made a child of God. That is never undone. It's indelible. It's an indelible mark. I think of it as the privilege of being a sister of life is in living at our convent. Sister Maeve lives at this convent with pregnant women. We get to go to their doctor's appointments with them. And it's amazing for a woman who's not even showing. She'll walk into a sonogram appointment, and the room's all dark, and they get it all set up, and then suddenly they put a little machine on her. And oh, it's like a little person. You're like, oh, my goodness, look at this little person who's got like swing and swimming, and you're like, person, look at you, little boy or little girl. And then you put a different little machine on, and you can hear the heartbeat. And it's like, and like it fills the whole room. You're literally in this little room. It's like, and it's like you're like enveloped by a heartbeat of a little person that no one can even see. And then you walk out the room and no one even perceives that she's carrying somebody, this little person inside her. And I was thinking at baptism, like we're sealed. God actually comes and dwells in your soul at baptism. He sets up His residence. You are never alone, ever. He's with you always, until the end of time. within us. If only we had a sonogram for the soul. You know, the life of God. Right? What is sanctity? Sanctity is a word that is the state or the quality of being holy. And holy comes from the Old English of wholeness. And don't we all long for wholeness? Just to feel whole. It's what we're seeking. And I know when we can think about sanctity or holiness, we think about something sad or boring or incredibly difficult or even impossible, being dragged through life, taking a sour pill, these sorts of things. But sanctity is living fully alive. Sanctity is joy. Holiness brings joy. And it stems from a union, a communion with a divine love that is real. Jesus is alive and wants me to be in a relationship with him. I love fingerprints because they distinguish you as the only you that has ever been and ever will be out of the millions and billions of people. And if God's going to arrange and design the invisible circle patterns on the ends of our finger, it's totally unique to us. What about our hearts? How much time do we spend on our hearts? You have a love that's yours alone to give. And only you can love God with the love of your heart. No one can take your place. No one is a substitute of you. He longs for your love. And I thought tonight I would present to you 3 saints who I thought I could put before you as an image of someone who took Jesus at his word, someone who knew that Jesus took them very seriously and responded, someone who knew that this was a love beyond what they could receive elsewhere. Elizabeth of the Trinity, Blessed Miguel Pro, and Charles de Foucauld are the 3 I want to choose. I love the saints so much. I love reading about them, and I can't read about enough of them. I can't find out about enough of them, because it's like, wow, he did it again, and he did it in a very different way with a very different person. Wow, look what he did with this heart. Look what he did with that personality. Look what he did with this age range. Look what he did in this vocation with this person. The saints fall in love with Jesus, who reveals the Father to us. They're like wounded by his beauty. They are stunned by the humility that he would become a child, that he would come to us in the Blessed Sacrament and make himself vulnerable to us. He'd be dropped on the ground. He'd be left abandoned and not visited. Jesus is willing to be lonely so that I'm never lonely. They love his ministry of preaching and teaching. They hang on his words. They know that he's the healer, and they ask him for that. They love him in his suffering and in his agony, his thirst on the cross, his abandonment to his own Father, that he gives himself over. They love his mercy, the way that he looks at sinners, the way that he engages them, the way he reaches out to them, the way he's not impeded in any way in coming to them. Each saint finds in Christ the answer to life's questions, the friend of their heart, and they follow him according to their unique personality, gifts, quirks, shortcomings. They follow him in the location and amongst the people he has chosen. Saints recognize that they have a role to play and that they've been entrusted with a work only they can fulfill. And they recognize their own limitations, they're honest about them, and they turn to him to supply everything. Double-sided, sorry. I think the first thing to do is to recognize the gift of life. It seems very simple to say, but just to receive my life as a gift, that I was chosen to come into existence and to be, and that I am. That's pure gift. I didn't ask for that, I didn't earn it, I didn't deserve it. Pure gift. And if I think about it, even driving here, poor Father Dan, we pegged him with questions. We were like children, 3 of us in the car. I would love to know what the explorers of this fine country thought when they started over in like Virginia and they made it to Arizona. I mean, literally, when they got here, they're like, wait, whoa, what are those 3 things? Like, I don't know, it was like the cacti and the stones, and then we like passed a coyote. Like, it was just like, it really felt like a different world we had stepped into. The the world is glorious. The created world around us, and you know that even atheists believe in God at Sedona. Everyone knows that. It is, if you think about the whole created world, you think about star clusters and weather patterns and the hydrangea flower, which is a bouquet unto itself, the redwood forest, snowflakes, snow-capped mountains. All of creation is glorious, but then there's the human person. And if you think about our own lives, gratitude is an antidote to depression and anxiety. Because by gratitude, I have to turn outward, I have to notice, and I have to extend my face. So instead of being inward, I'm outward. And gratitude is a work. Sometimes I have to really work to see the good and to choose to love it. But if you think about it, even our senses, seeing, touching, tasting, hearing, smelling. And I'm going a little Julie Andrews on you, but I just want to share some of my favorite things. Taste buds, okay? Taste buds. Seriously, just the fact that God would give us taste buds. I grew up with brothers, only brothers. Now I have 114 sisters. But I grew up surrounded by guys. And we'd be hanging out around the house. And I don't know if this is a phase common to young men. I really don't, or if it just was happening around me. But there was a point when they were totally engrossed in all things barbecue and like making their own rubs and sauces and like mason jars everywhere, different cuts of meat, how to grill them or fillet them or broil them. I don't know. I'm getting some nods. The obsessive quality of this. So like different flavors, so it's like sweet, spicy, tangy, hot, burn your mouth off, hot, smoky. I mean, just, wow. And I remember one of the guys was, at his place with the girl, and he's like, just to think, God could have made us like plants, having to photosynthesize. He's like, and we would have had to be like, hey, want to get lunch and like go outside for 10 minutes in the sun. I'm so glad he did. And he like flips the steak, and you're like, yeah. Deep. But it's true. It's like the world is beautiful and the world is glorious, but we're not satisfied by this world, right? Nothing's enough for us. We have infinite desires. They're infinite, and we can frustrate ourselves a great deal, or we can become very saddened when my desires are not met by finite things. It can be very difficult for us to receive and accept that. It can feel like something's terribly wrong. Meanwhile, it's an indication that something is terribly right, and that we're not made for this world, and that I shouldn't set up my tent and stake it here, but because if I'm staying, we're intended for heaven. This world should not satisfy me. This world should not be the end-all be-all, and I never will be satisfied. So I think if we come to terms with that, there would be a greater sense of peace, that it's not that something's wrong, it's that something's terribly right, and I'm not going to be here forever, and circumstances are going to change, but what doesn't change is my destiny and the reality that I live in. We're always looking for more, we're always hoping for more, and we're always expecting more. And that's kind of like when you're single, this is totally true about love. We love to be loved. We actually need to be loved, to be chosen, for someone to see us, seek us out, And you might remember, I remember like in high school, when you're single, it can take forever to get ready to go out. I don't know if this is true for everyone, but I remember just trying to get the outfit right, and to get the outfit to match the makeup, and then the hair. And sometimes the hair would not cooperate, and you just need to just re-shower sometimes. Just get like blank canvas going, okay? Just to get things in order. And guys, I know that you need to get your hair going in the right direction for the right flavor of spritz or whatever you use. So I think you know what I'm talking about here. But it's almost like, even if I know everyone who's going to be there at the party or at the gathering like this, there's this little glimmer of hope that maybe someone new will be there. Someone unexpected. Someone who corresponds to all of my desires for love and romance. And I'll be on one side of the room laughing, and that person will see me laughing and be totally taken by my laugh. And And then our eyes would lock, and there'd be music, you know. And this is real. This is right. This is just. We are made in the image and likeness of God, who's a communion of persons and love himself. We long for love, and we cannot put our infinite needs on a finite person. It will crush them. Only an infinite one can fill me. So God knows you. He loves you. You belong to him. He wants to meet your needs, and he needs you to ask him to meet them. He wants to hear your frustrations. He wants to hear your sadness, your disappointments. God loves every soul he communicates. He creates and he communicates himself very uniquely to each soul. So even comparing yourself, right, the way that you pray, it's almost impossible to do. You learn to pray by praying, and you're the only one who prays like you pray. You're the only one who prays like that. And the Lord wants you to pray like that. Made you to pray like that. So being able to spend time with him intentionally every day. 20 minutes a day. I mean it. And if you're not doing that, I think we all know where that 20 minutes might be going. We need to cut that out. Wherever it is. Wasted minutes. You know? 20 minutes of doing something that actually leaves me more frustrated, or more sad, or more distracted, or more numb, whatever it is. It's got to go. 20 minutes a day with the Lord, and it's got to be protected. Protected time. So often with our prayer life, we're like, I'm going to pray at 2 o'clock today. And then someone's like, hey, what are you doing around like 2? We're like, I'm free. It's like, wait, do you have an appointment with someone? Are you going to actually meet someone? Are you going to get together with someone? Yeah. Oh, I'll pray tonight. Right as I fall asleep. That's when I have a really good prayer. No. Jesus is a real person. He's alive. You're really meeting a real person. And as soon as we start to protect and guard that time, we begin to crave it. Miss it when it's taken from us. Carve it out and be dedicated about it. You will never regret that. It's the only way life will change. It's the only way life will get really rich and really beautiful. It's the only way we can actually hear, by giving God that time. That's the only way I can hear him. It's so funny, people are like, I've been discerning, and like, I don't hear anything from him, and I'm like, how much are you praying? Like on the way to work, sometimes, like I just like spend some time like listening like to music. Like it's not a prayer life. 20 minutes, read the Gospels. Just read it through if you haven't done it. All for it. Slowly. Lent's coming up. It's right around the corner. Start now. Read the Gospels. He actually spoke to us. The Son of God was sent down to us, and he actually spoke. And it wasn't just words for 2,000 years ago. Those apply to you. He's talking to you. He has something to say. And he wants to hear what you have to say back. He wants your questions. He wants you to say, that's strange that you did that. I don't get that. Or, wow, what does it mean? Or, why don't you hear me like that? I want to see. I want to hear. No? So the saints, I'm going to get to my points. Saint Therese once told her sister Pauline, I have always wanted to become a saint. Unfortunately, when I compare myself with the saints, I've always found that there's a difference between me and the saints. It's the same difference between a mountain whose summit is lost in the clouds and a humble grain of sand, trodden underfoot by passersby. End quote. Now, I confess, when I first read that line from St. Therese, I felt so discouraged. I was like, wow, Therese, if you're a grain of sand, that makes me like, I don't know, an amoeba? I'm like the hairball and amoeba coughed up. Like, I don't know, how low can you go? And thanks a lot. And, you know, it's inevitable. Whenever we compare, we despair. It's a great, like, rule of life, and you'll see it in your own heart, your own spiritual life. As soon as I begin comparing myself to anyone else, I almost immediately despair. Don't do it. You're unique. You have your own gifts, your own weaknesses, your own sets of talents. God's plan is different for you than other people. Don't compare. And that attitude would sadden St. Therese, because she said something more that I need to hang on to. God does not inspire unrealizable desires. He these desires to be loved, to give myself as a gift, to be seen and known, to matter, to change the lives of others, to change the world. Those desires matter. God gave those to you. He wants to be the one to help fulfill them by cooperating with His grace, with His love. My favorite part of any saint's story is actually their humanity. I love anecdotes of their childhood. I love hearing that they liked food, that they fell in love, that they worked hard, that they had difficulties in their family life. I need to hear that. My favorite part is their struggles and their character flaws. I mean, is that terrible to say that I actually love that so much? Why? Because it brings them close to me. And I can relate to that. They were human. They lived this life, and they lived it well. Why? Because they pressed in to Jesus at every point, even in their weaknesses. So the first thing, Elizabeth of the Trinity, her secret that she tells us is that you are never alone. St. John the Beloved said, "See what love the Father has bestowed on us in letting us be called children of God." And yet, that is what we are. This is something very basic in the spiritual life, but it can be really difficult. The Catechism said something really beautiful that I love. Catechism says, "No one is Father as God is Father. No one is Father as God is Father." And when we look at the parables, we look at how Jesus revealed the Father to us. I love the Father, the prodigal Father. He cannot wait to hold his son. I love what the Father was mentioning in his homily. He doesn't care that we stink, that we've been like pigs. He has so much affection for us. He waits for us. He's watching for us, but he won't disable us. He won't disengage us. He wants our freedom. He wants us to choose Him. He wants us to choose Him. St. Elizabeth of the Trinity was called the saint of one thought because she recognized that on the day of baptism, we became temples of God. And she said, "Be always with Him who's always with you." And she literally lived her life in recognition that she was always with God. It could always turn to Him at any moment. You know, when Jesus tells us to pray, He says, "Go into your inner room, close the door, and be alone with the Father who sees you in secret." We can always go into our room, which is our heart, close the door, and be alone with the Father in secret, and let Him love me there. At one point, Jesus says, one of the most beautiful lines in the Gospels, He says, "The Father Himself loves you." I love that. He loves you so much. He knows you. He wants you to know Him. He sees you. He knows what you're going through. He knows your history. He knows your future. And He's a provider. And He's present to His children. He's not too busy. He doesn't need to be entertained. He's not distracted. He's not about His own pursuits. He's about you. And He loves you. Our Father. Elizabeth of the Trinity grew up in France, and as a child, she was known for her horrifically violent temper tantrums. Around the age of 2, the parish priest asked if she had a doll, if her mom would be willing to loan one of Elizabeth's dolls to be the baby Jesus in the creche. And her mom loaned a doll, and Elizabeth saw it during the Mass and was like, she was like, "Giselle! My Giselle!" She was like, "No!" They had to forcibly remove her, walk her out. This is the temperament of great saints and great sinners. As a teen, she excelled in the piano. She made friends easily. Children loved her. She recognized in herself a sense of real pride, and she tried everything she could to conquer it. She lost her father at a very early age, and her mom, as a widow, really kind of clung to her and needed her. And when she felt called to enter the Carmelites, her mom really struggled with her vocation. And she actually refused to give her permission and then insisted that they take all their vacations near military headquarters to attend the balls and parties. And she had Elizabeth dress up. And one of the men because Elizabeth had given her heart to Jesus and was living as a woman claimed. One of the men was quoted as saying, "Just look at her. She's not for us." So people perceived this had happened. And she loved her mother and her sister intensely and was patient with where they were at until her mother gave permission and she entered. And she once said, "I have found heaven on earth because heaven is God and God is in my soul. So let yourself be loved." And I think the secret she's telling us too is sometimes we're just afraid to be loved. We're afraid that we can be loved, you know, and that we're worthy of it. And that's why I have a new favorite song. And I don't know, you know when your favorite song comes on and you just know that it's yours somehow. When God inspired the artist, like sure he gave it to that person, but he really had you in mind, knowing how it would affect you and what areas of your heart it would penetrate. And I'm going to just sing a little bit of my new favorite song. So just close your eyes and don't look at me for a second. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. Oh, it chases me down, fights till I'm found, leaves the 99. And I couldn't earn it, and I don't deserve it. Still you give yourself away. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. Yeah. That's all of our song, actually. It's so true. Before we spoke a word, he was singing over us. And he's been so good to us. So I really recommend practicing this every day, and not 20 minutes a day. But just bringing yourself into the presence of God, who's within you. If you can be in his presence in the Blessed Sacrament, he's truly present. I mean, he's given himself to us in this very humble way, hidden way, so that we won't be afraid to approach him. He's stripped himself of everything for us. I love that we even call it exposing the Blessed Sacrament. I can't believe that we call it that. But it's like, he's going to be exposed, like revealed before us. So our vision, our gaze, our hearts, it's beautiful. So the second saint, we're doing okay, so don't worry about time. Blessed Miguel Pro. His secret is that in any circumstance, and in any suffering, love is possible. While I was in college, I was reading a saint book to one of my cousins, and she was about 6 years old at the time. And it must have been entitled something like Virgin Martyrs Who Died the Most Horrific Deaths, because we're like flipping through and it's like St. Agnes, St. Joan of Arc, Maria Goretti. And it wasn't long before Julia kind of decisively closed the book and goes, "I don't want to be a saint." And I was like, "Julia, why did you say that?" And she looks at me like I'm crazy. She goes, "Because I think it would hurt." I'm like, "Ooh, boy, could I second that?" How many fears keep us from the freedom and joy intended for us? Fears of what giving God permission in my life might look like. Fear that following God will hurt my social life, my love life, my family life, my precious plans that are so great. It's really helpful to name fears. It's incredibly helpful. They lose their chokehold when we can bring them forward and say what they are, say where they're coming from, say what they're holding me back from, where their roots are, maybe who inspired them in my life. Because we often fear that the will of God is somehow opposed to me. Like if I actually told God what I wanted, he'd be like, "That's exactly what I'm going to take away from you." What kind of a God is that? I mean, seriously, run for the hills. I mean, I don't know who that is. That's not God. He's not vindictive like that. He's not out to get us. He's not a speed trap God, you know, like, "Gotcha. Knew you'd mess up. Just waiting for it." Glory be. Frightening. He's so full of love. He actually knows how we'll be holiest and happiest. I remember in my own life my own discernment, I did not know how God could ever fulfill my desires for love or for motherhood, quite frankly. When I was discerning religious vocation, I had two very, very huge fears. That I'd be like loveless, lonely, empty, like that life would pass me by. Or that I would literally have to have something removed from my heart physically. And I remember Jesus responding to me with two simple questions. I was like, would you love me with the love that you're saving for a husband? Would you love me with it? Would you let me love you as spouse perfectly? And I was like, well, what about the kids, Because I really intended on having my own litany of saints, Peter, James, John, Paul. And I remember the Lord just showing me very gently and beautifully, like, would you be willing to love every child as if it were your own child of flesh and blood? Would you be willing to love in that way? And it truly is the 100-fold. It's more than I could have ever asked for or imagined. It's real. It's true. He's true to his promises. So many saints didn't know, what God was calling them to. And they said yes. And Miguel Pro is a perfect example. He's born and raised in Mexico. He was a lovable prankster and a mimic, a guitarist. He dated a non-Catholic girl, a Protestant girl, and she broke up with him because he wrote a letter to her and a letter to his mom and accidentally put them in the wrong envelopes. And in the letter to his mom, it was all about the Virgin of Guadalupe, and that girlfriend couldn't handle a devotion to the Blessed Mother, so it's like, get rid of her, So she broke off with him, and at the age of 18, he kind of stopped practicing his faith. And he went on a retreat, sheer grace, and received a gift from God to return to him in his fullness, to know his love, to know that he had a plan, and he felt called to enter the Jesuits. After ordination, he was sent back to Mexico, and it was during a time of intense and severe persecution in the church, where religious and priests were shot upon sight. And so there's great pictures of him. You should look him up. But he would dress up. So as a priest, to do his ministry, he would be a homeless beggar, and he'd go to the door and knock on someone's door. They'd open the door. He'd perform a baptism or a wedding, leave a homeless beggar. He'd be a car mechanic, and everyone would go to the mechanic store, and he'd give a retreat to the men for the afternoon. He'd be a really wealthy businessman. He'd extend his belly and put on a stash and a top hat, and he'd raise money for 100 families he was supporting financially himself as a priest during a time of persecution. He's awesome. He had stomach issues his whole life. He was always sick, and he even would crack jokes so that he could grab his belly because it always hurt him, and so he was always in pain. But when the authorities finally caught Miguel Pro, they decided to execute him in a very public way to scare the people of Mexico from practicing their faith. So you can actually watch it online. They actually recorded it because they wanted people to see them execute him so that they would be terrified. So in his last moments, he's kneeling. He has a rosary in his hand. He had asked the Blessed Mother earlier if he could join her beneath the foot of the cross, if he could live his life with her there. And he stands, and you see him extend his hands before the executioners who shot him, and he yells, "Viva Cristo Rey! Long live Christ the King!" And they shot him, and then they blasted papers. They showed the really kind of primitive film of it, and it had the complete opposite effect that they thought it would have. Literally, the blood of martyrs is the seed of Christian faith. So people were really "Rah!" It was nobody kills our priest, And so there was a huge Cristero movement, and really everything got overturned. But Miguel Pro, in the midst of personal suffering, just physically, but also persecution, knowing he was in danger, willing to sacrifice his life. His nickname was Sweetbread because he brought everybody to sweetbread. He's just really fun. But whoever is in Christ, is a new creation, and regardless of our circumstances, sometimes we can feel abandoned by God, or we can feel like he forgot us, or he's not with us. When we're spending time with him, when we're pressing into him, we're always in union and communion with him. And sometimes we do taste that abandonment, but it's not because he left us. It's not because he left us. It's because it's an invitation to intimacy on the cross. An intimacy I can't have outside of that. Suffering is not to be experienced as punishment. Suffering is an invitation. It's an invitation from Jesus to be with him and to be alone with him and to be in a place with him that I would not be able to be without it. So we press into him in suffering. My third saint is Blessed Charles de Foucauld, and he gives us the secret that God makes all things new. We've all made choices in our life that we regret. We're all sinners, every single one of us here. And sin always does the same thing for all of us. It whispers this false promise. And then after the fact, once we've fallen, causes us to doubt the possibility that God could love us, or that we could ever be restored, or that we could ever be good for anyone. And the women that we walk with in our Hope and Healing mission after abortion, they describe their experience after, and it's just this sense of loss and grief, anger, confusion. It inflicted anew and a deep wound. And they're left, both men and women, after abortion in silence to feel crazy feeling this way. But they're not crazy. And Jesus doesn't want any of us to be alone. And he tells us why he came, and it really scandalized the Pharisees. Jesus came for sinners. He came for us, to heal the brokenhearted, to bring release to prisoners, so that those who are paralyzed and lame can walk again. Mercy is very real. It's experiential, it's healing, and it's possible. We are regenerated in Jesus and in the sacrament of confession. And what's really important, I think, in this generation, in this culture, is to look to those who've journeyed in front of us, to see who's been on this journey of healing and hope, who has experienced really the sorrow and the pain and the regret of sin, even if it was seemingly exciting or thrilling at the time, and now live in the wake of it. Who has experienced that and let Jesus transform them? Have you all heard of Audrey Assad? Is anybody familiar with Audrey Assad, the singer-songwriter? She shared an incredible testimony years ago at a Focus conference about being a teenager and stumbling upon pornography accidentally, becoming addicted to it very quickly, and this led her into habitual masturbation, shame like you wouldn't believe, darkness, loneliness, real, grief, and feeling so isolated. And she shares with incredible delicacy and honesty how Jesus met her directly in that place of the wound, and how he brought her out of it into freedom and wholeness. She talks about how it's possible for you, and it's possible in him to be freed from that bondage. Matt Fradd shares his testimony in his book Delivered and online, and he has free ebooks. And then Jason and Kristalina Everett also speak about the journey of chastity in a specific way. And confession, we can be terrified of confession. And the evil one loves to play up on this because he knows that whatever stays in the darkness can just multiply and take over. But when we shed light into darkness, it scatters. And I'm free. Confession heals us from death-dealing shame, and it relieves us of burdens we were never meant to carry. Blessed Charles de Foucauld, so he came from a very aristocratic family, very wealthy. He was actually orphaned at the age of 6 and was raised by a very devout and wealthy grandfather who was incredibly loving. As he grew into young adulthood, he just fell off the deep end, lost his faith. He entered the military, and during that time, his grandfather passed away. So at 19, he received an incredibly huge inheritance and spent it on a wild life. Food, drinking, gambling. He was living with his mistress. He became a scandal to his family, and he received a dishonorable discharge from the military. When he returned home, he was met by his cousin, Marie, and the light of her faith just lit up his darkness. And Charles started going into the back of churches and sitting in the back pew, lost. And he would pray what he would later call the strange prayer. God, if you're real, reveal yourself to me. And God did. And he went to confession after years of being entrenched in sin. And he said, after that moment, I became a child again. He dedicated his life to God, eventually ordained a priest, and he lived among Muslims and Jews in Africa. And he knew that Jesus was there because he was there, and he brought him there. So these secrets, God dwells within us. He gives us the capacity to love in any circumstance, persecution, suffering, pain, physical, mental, emotional. And He makes us new. He makes us new in His mercy. And we see this over and over and over again. We see it in the women that we serve who are pregnant and vulnerable. And I want to tell you about Patty. I had a privilege of walking with Patty. And when Patty came into our lives, she found out she was pregnant, and her boyfriend just gave her an ultimatum. He was like, "Will you pick? Me or the baby? And if you pick the baby, you can move out." And crushed and betrayed, she chose to move out. And she moved into the convent with us. Now, Patty was from Thailand, and she was raised a Buddhist, but she would be in our holy hours. And she had her own little spot in the pew with her own little books, like a little nun. And she would sit in there not really knowing what she was doing, but receiving serious healing. She let Jesus just wash over her memory, her heart, her feminine beauty, her identity, her sexuality. She just let Jesus heal. It was like being in the sun. You have this experience. I'm originally from Florida, so I know what it's like to be in the heat like this. But sometimes when it's overcast, we don't put sunscreen on because we don't feel the heat of the sun. And then like later, you've been out in the sun all day. Later that night, you're like, whoa, I get scorched. What has happened? This can happen to us in prayer, right? Where we're like in prayer and we're like, nothing, lame. My prayer life stinks. I stink. Everything's wrong. I'm leaving. Bye, Jesus. Worst holy hour ever. Yeah. Never judge your prayer while you're in it. Ever. That's always a temptation. Especially if you've made a commitment to stay in prayer for so long. Stay. The evil one loves to make us feel like we're incapable. And sometimes I don't realize the impact until later. When I actually got scorched during that holy hour. I didn't realize it, but I was in the presence of the Son. Being in the presence of God will always change you. Always. So there she was, letting herself be healed. And her son came 2 months premature, and it scared all of us, and scared her in a special way. And fearful for his life, Patty asked at the hospital that he be baptized Catholic. And he was baptized and given the name Patrick Joseph, strong Catholic name. And was put in the neonatal intensive care unit, and he was a fighter. Little Patrick Joseph lived. And it was really beautiful. It became an image for me of Holy Communion because Patty was only allowed to hold him for 10 minutes a day because when she held him, his heart raced. And it actually was making him lose weight. So she would spend her entire day waiting for her 10 minutes to hold the baby, to hold him, and then spend the rest of the day in Thanksgiving that she had another day with him. So it became like a cycle of Holy Communion with Patrick Joseph. And when he got out, she realized if this is what she wanted for him in his death, this is what she wanted for both of them in their life. So she entered RCIA. And I love this. I love what God did in that because we were also living in the house with a woman named Gulnara, who was from Russia, who had been raised without any faith at all. And she loved Patty, and Patty loved her, and they were the best of friends. And Gulnara started going to RCIA just to hang out with Patty. So she's like, "Sister, is it okay if I go to RCIA?" And we're like, "Bye! Have so much fun at RCIA together tonight." And she entered the church and had her baby, baptized, named Daniel. Beautiful. So Patty decided to leave for her study abroad program. I decided to go back to Thailand, and she couldn't finish the program. And the priest preparing her was like, "It's okay, Patty. I think you're ready for your first Holy Communion and for your baptism, and we're going to still do it before you fly out. We're going to do it. You can get confirmed at home." And I was with her the night that we were picking out her baptismal garment at the mall at Macy's. And I'll never forget it as long as I live, because I was a novice, and so I'd only been in the life a couple of years, so like it still was a thrill for me to go shopping. And I was like, oh, 66% off. And I had the baby, and I was like rifling through the dress rack, and I remember this gentleman coming over, and he's like, "Sister, can I help you with anything?" Because like I didn't realize what I looked like, but a sister in full habit, dress shopping. Just got really uncomfortable really quickly. said, pray that we find the perfect baptismal garment for that young woman over there. And he was like, something like this. And it was like, lit up. It was stunning. And Patty, on the day of her First Holy Communion, asked the sisters if we would sing. That was a really bad idea. Bad idea. As she received. So, Jesu, joy of man's desiring. And Pie Jesu, sweet Jesus. It's a gorgeous song. We made it through, the first verse. We made it through. But to watch her receive Jesus, the divine bridegroom of our souls, and to unite himself to her. It was her wedding day. And it was a treasured gift to watch that. But this is real. And this is happening. This happens to us. It happened to us tonight. Jesus gives himself to us. It's like God, who knows that we're starving for love, made himself food. Who could have ever asked God to do that? I mean, you would never have dreamt to have asked him to do that. But he comes closer to us than any human being is capable of coming. He unites himself to us. And Augustine says, unlike normal food where it becomes us, this food we can become like him by receiving him. We can be healed. We can be strengthened. Every time I receive Jesus, I'm receiving everything that I need, everything that I long for most. And it doesn't need to be on the level of the emotion. I think we can get really tied up on that. This is a level of faith, and faith is a gift, and faith is a gift I ask for. So tonight, as we go forth from here, just really want to encourage you. I want to encourage you during this time in your life. It's a precious and sacred time. But it's not the end of the world. I always feel like people think college is like the time of your life, and I don't know where they went to college. I don't. It's a wonderful time. It's a formative time. It doesn't have the last word. It really doesn't. It's a beginning. It's a starting point. There's life after college, and it's great. It's beautiful. It's not about me anymore. And it's a joy because I find myself in the gift of myself. So I really want to encourage you in this time of college to, do the work of preparation for your vocation. Do the work of preparation. Really come close to Jesus. Give him permission in your life. Unite yourself to him. Go to confession and confess anything that is unconfessed. Anything that is withheld. It's blocking you. It blocks you. Be set free and receive the fullness of grace. Be set free. Be not afraid. And then if there's any knots, any fears of commitment, fears of intimacy, fears of failure, any fears, like being able to work through that with trusted friends, work through it with a mentor, work through it with a spiritual director, or find a counselor that you can trust. Work through it. Literally, ready your heart to be a gift. You are a gift, and you want to make a gift, and you want to be received as a gift. Now's your time. It's so exciting because you know what, men? We need holy husbands and fathers. We're desperate. We need you. If that is your vocation, to love your wife with all that you are and all that you have, and to be present to your children, to guide them, to affirm them, to correct them, and to set boundaries and keep them, to provide for them, to be present to them, if that is your vocation, say yes with all that you are and all that you have. Some of the men in this room are going to be called the vocation of marriage. Say yes. Some of you are going to be called the vocation of the priesthood, to be another Christ, to bring down Jesus from heaven, to forgive sins in his name. Say yes with all that you are and all you have. Everyone calls you Father. Everyone. We need men of integrity. We need men who are good shepherds, who are willing to swing their staff when a wolf comes too close to the flock. We need you. Say yes with all that you are and all that you have. And ladies, we need holy wives and holy mothers who are committed, who recognize the gift of being able to support, love, encourage, affirm your spouse, help them be a saint, to be present to your children, to love anyone put into the reaches of your hands, your maternal arms, to love and affirm and encourage them and nurture new life in them. We need you so desperately. Say yes with all that you are and all that you have. That is your vocation. I know I talked to one on the phone, but I want to do something radical. I'm like, that's radical. If that's your vocation, that's radical. We need it. We're desperate. We're desperate for it right now. Ladies, some of you are going to be called to be religious sisters. To give to Jesus all of your desires and to put all your expectations in Him, to love you as spouse, to be His bride, to console His heart, to love every child, each and every person with your maternal love, to tell the vulnerable, to tell the weak, the wounded, the needy, like, I'm available to you. Whatever God is calling you to, say yes with all that you are and all that you have. And I would say pray every night for your future vocation. I remember praying every night for my future spouse. Father, Son, Holy Spirit. Lord, please bless my future husband, wherever he is and whatever he's doing. And if he's dating anyone right now, she better keep her hands on him. Amen. Now I know those prayers went somewhere. I don't know where they went, but I know the Lord heard them, so I really encourage you. And I think what I'd love to do is just close tonight with the litany of trust. I actually don't have one. Sisters? Oh, sorry. I'll just close with the litany. One of my sisters was wrestling with the Lord about something. If anybody did not get a litany, please raise your hand and the sisters will come around with the litany of trust. One of my sisters was wrestling with the Lord with something. And she said to him, Lord, if you just help me understand, then I'll consent and say yes. And she felt him saying back to her, I'm asking you to say yes without understanding because I love you and you love me. And he said, I want to teach you to trust. And she knew if I said yes and pressed in, trusting he's just good and he knows better, it would give him good pleasure and joy. She wanted that for him. So she wrote this prayer, and I want you to be able to pray it together. And the image of divine mercy, as you know, there's graces even just looking at the image and receiving from His heart. And Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit, amen. Please just respond with the bold. The litany of trust. From the belief that I have to earn your love,
deliver me, Jesus.
From the fear that I am unlovable,
Deliver me, Jesus.
From the false security that I have what it takes,
Deliver me, Jesus.
From the fear that trusting you will leave me more destitute,
Deliver me, Jesus.
From all suspicion of your words and promises,
Deliver me, Jesus.
From the rebellion against childlike dependency on you,
Deliver me, Jesus.
From refusals and reluctances in accepting your will,
Deliver me, Jesus.
From anxiety about the future,
Deliver me, Jesus.
From resentment or excessive preoccupation with the past,
Deliver me, Jesus.
From restless self-seeking in the present moment,
Deliver me, Jesus.
From disbelief in your love and presence,
Deliver me, Jesus.
From the fear of being asked to give more than I have,
Deliver me, Jesus.
From the belief that my life has no meaning or worth,
Deliver me, Jesus.
From the fear of what love demands,
Deliver me, Jesus.
From discouragement,
Deliver me, Jesus.
that you are continually holding me, sustaining me, loving me,
Jesus, I trust in you.
that your love goes deeper than my sins and failings and transforms me,
Jesus, I trust in you.
that not knowing what tomorrow brings is an invitation to lean on you,
Jesus, I trust in you.
that you are with me in my suffering,
Jesus, I trust in you.
that my suffering united to your own will bear fruit in this life and the next,
Jesus, I trust in you.
that you will not leave me orphaned, that you are present in your church,
Jesus, I trust in you.
that your plan is better than anything else,
Jesus, I trust in you.
that you always hear me and in your goodness always respond to me,
Jesus, I trust in you.
that you give me the grace to accept forgiveness and to forgive others,
Jesus, I trust in you.
that you give me all the strength I need for what is asked,
Jesus, I trust in you.
that my life is a gift,
Jesus, I trust in you.
that you will teach me to trust you,
Jesus, I trust in you.
that you are my Lord and my God,
Jesus, I trust in you.
that I am your beloved one.
Jesus, I trust in you.
So the sisters and I, Sister Mary Loretta, Sister Maeve, and myself will be around if you have questions or share anything with us. We also have a whole table here of newsletters from stories of grace from the women that we serve and those we encounter. If people want to sign up for a monthly email, well, it's like not really monthly because I send them out, so like every 3 months or so. Meditation, you can go ahead and sign up on vocations, discernment, consecration, and then if you want another litany to take home to a friend or a family member, please feel free to grab one. Okay, so many blessings. We'll see some of y'all tomorrow. We're gonna have a women's brunch of Treasure in a Field, and is it here, Tom? Great, and then here tomorrow morning, so 9:30 to 11. Thanks.